This lecture is going to cover chapter 15 on our autonomic nervous system. So, first, we're going to compare and contrast our somatic and autonomic nervous system, and then we're going to look at our preganglionic and postganglionic neuron pathways. We're going to look at the differences of the sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous systems, looking at the structures involved and what is happening to those structures. We're going to look at some special types of neurons called cholinergic neurons and adrenergic neurons and the types of receptors that they have. And then we're going to look at some special vocabulary related to the nervous system. So, first off, just starting with our peripheral nervous system. Again, our central nervous system includes our brain and spinal cord, and we had 2 full chapters on that. Our peripheral nervous system then includes our somatic nervous system, which covers all of our voluntary movements to those skeletal muscles. And we looked at that a lot in chapters 10 and 12. Looking at our autonomic nervous system now, this is going to control those involuntary actions. This is going to innervate structures such as smooth muscles in our digestive tract and our blood vessels, our cardiac muscle, which is our heart, and many of our glands, including your sweat glands, your salivary glands, those glands in your digestive tract that help produce digestive juices. And we'll look at the different divisions of the autonomic nervous system today, including the sympathetic fight or flight branch and our parasympathetic rest digest branch. So, looking at our basic autonomic pathways. So, just kind of starting again with comparing and contrasting what we've covered so far to how this is going to differ. So far, we've been looking at the somatic nervous system, which is what you're seeing up here in picture A. We see a single motor neuron exiting the ventral root of our spinal cord and going to our effector cells, releasing acetylcholine into the synapse, and then that acetylcholine triggering an action potential, which leads to contraction of that skeletal muscle. So we're going to see a similar pathway here in our autonomic nervous system pathways, but we are always going to see a multi-neuron pathway instead of a single neuron pathway. That's our biggest difference. So we are going to have 2 neurons involved in these pathways. We are going to have a presynaptic or preganglionic neuron that comes first. This neuron is going to exit that ventral root of our spinal cord, same as before, and it is either going to go to an autonomic ganglion or the adrenal medulla, which is an adrenal gland, is a small gland on top of our kidney. So we are going to see that first neuron exit the ventral root of the spinal cord and reach its first target, which is either a ganglion or the adrenal medulla. The second neuron will then be released from that ganglion or second step in case of a hormone with the adrenal medulla. If we have the second neuron coming out of our ganglion, we call that our postganglionic or postsynaptic neuron. When we are looking at our autonomic pathways, it doesn't matter if it's sympathetic or parasympathetic. Our first neuron, our preganglionic or presynaptic neuron, will always release the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Acetylcholine will then cross that synapse and cause an effect in our postganglionic or postsynaptic neuron, carrying that action potential to our effectors, or will trigger the release of a hormone from the adrenal medulla. So, our postganglionic neurons or our postsynaptic neurons after that ganglia are going to release either acetylcholine as well, or if they are sympathetic neurons, they are going to release norepinephrine. Norepinephrine can be released from the adrenal medulla and directly into the bloodstream, or as a neurotransmitter from our postganglionic neuron directly to the effector cells. Looking at that sympathetic nervous system in a bit more detail here, again, we call this one our fight or flight system for short. This is kind of your body's emergency alert system. You are in usually a life-threatening situation if we are really igniting this whole system, and our whole body's goal here is to survive the situation. So we can see here from about T1 to L2-ish area, we are going to have a short preganglionic or presynaptic neuron leading into these little ganglia here that are called our sympathetic chain ganglia. So we'll have a short little preganglionic neuron releasing acetylcholine to the cell body of neuron number 2, our postganglionic neuron, here in the sympathetic chain ganglia. That second neuron, our postganglionic neuron, is going to carry that message out to many effectors of the body. You can see we have a widespread amount of tissues involved here. In the head and neck, we're going to activate those pupils. We're going to make them larger or dilate those pupils, which allows more light into your eye, giving you a better picture of what's going on in the world around you. We're also going to inhibit those salivary glands. Our goal is not to digest food and absorb nutrients. We don't really care about that right now. We need to get out of this situation. Working our way down into our thoracic cavity, we are going to see these postganglionic neurons innervate the heart and increase our heart rate and contractility, allowing more blood to get out to our tissues and get oxygenated faster. We are also going to see postganglionic neurons innervate our respiratory system, especially our bronchioles and our lungs. This is going to increase our respiratory rate and widen our airway, allowing us to inhale more oxygen, allowing us to oxygenate our tissues more easily. We will also see many organs of the digestive tract digestive tract and urinary tract innervated here. These organs are going to be really inhibited. We are going to kind of decrease or stop their functioning temporarily. Again, our goal is to survive this situation. We want to send a lot of blood away from the digestive tract. We want to send it out to our skeletal muscles so you can run away or fight your way out of this situation. We will also see some of these sympathetic postganglionic neurons travel to our skin, specifically those sweat glands, to help increase our body's ability to sweat and maintain our body temperature by thermoregulating. It will also affect those little erector pili muscles of the kind of muscles in our skin that cause those little goosebumps. So this is why when you get scared or something kind of feels off, you really get those little hairs standing up on the back of your neck. That is due to a direct activation of your sympathetic nervous system. There are several structures that the sympathetic nervous system only innervates and parasympathetic doesn't. Those include things like our sweat glands and the erector muscles of our skin. There's not really an off switch to that. Can't really decrease sweating more than you already not sweating. And other things like our kidneys, spleen, and blood vessels. Again, we really don't want to relax these tissues too much. Your kidneys and spleen are filtering a lot of your blood, and we really don't want to have them not be doing that just because you're in a rest digest situation. Same thing with our blood vessels. We don't want to over vasodilate them. That's going to decrease the blood's ability to get back to your heart. It can cause a lot of issues for maintaining a normal blood pressure. We also see the sympathetic nervous system exclusively innervating the adrenal medulla, and that's because we only want the release of that epinephrine and norepinephrine during those times of stress, the fight or flight scenario. We do not want to release those hormones while we are activating the parasympathetic nervous system. Table 15.4 in your textbook has a list of every effect of the sympathetic nervous system if you'd like to see them. Let's compare and contrast that now with the opposite system, our parasympathetic nervous system. This is our rest digest system. So this is our relax system. Our goal here is going to be a lot of digestion and absorption of our nutrients. We are going to see a longer preganglionic neuron usually here than we did before, and we're going to see these come off of the brain stem and cranial nerves as well as the sacral spinal cord. Again, innervating many tissues of the body. With the eyes here, we will have the pupils be constricted, again, decreasing light into the eye. We are not trying to find an escape route. We do not need all of that light into the eyes. We don't need them fully vasodilated. We're also going to be activating the organs of the digestive system, and this includes our salivary glands. So we're going to see increased innervation to those salivary glands to increase our salivary gland saliva production. We will see the opposite effects in the heart and the lungs here. So our heart rate and our respiratory rate will decrease. And the exact opposite with the digestive tract. We will be increasing the blood flow and nervous system innervation to organs like the stomach and intestines, again, to help make sure that we are digesting and absorbing those nutrients. Again, table 15.4 has a full list of the effects of the parasympathetic nervous system for you to compare and contrast those. Looking at our specific neurons that we have involved in our autonomic nervous system, Our parasympathetic branch includes neurons that only release acetylcholine, and we call those neurons cholinergic. So both the preganglionic and postganglionic neuron of the parasympathetic nervous system will be cholinergic neurons. Our sympathetic branch, our preganglionic neuron, will also be a cholinergic neuron because it releases acetylcholine. And our postganglionic neuron may be a cholinergic or adrenergic neuron. Again, adrenergic neurons are releasing adrenaline or norepinephrine, and that's where they get their name from. So, our cholinergic neurons release acetylcholine and again include all preganglionic neurons in the autonomic nervous system. Our sympathetic postganglionic neurons that innervate our sweat glands, and then all of the postganglionic neurons of our parasympathetic nervous system. These cholinergic neurons are going to be releasing acetylcholine, which can bind to two types of receptors in our body. Nicotinic receptors, which we see in our sympathetic and parasympathetic neurons, our adrenal medulla, and are the receptors that we see at that neuromuscular junction that we looked at in chapter 10. When acetylcholine binds to a nicotinic receptor, it causes depolarization and excitation of that tissue, which is how we get that increased effects in those organs from our sympathetic and parasympathetic neurons and of the excitation of muscle tissue at the neuromuscular junction. Acetylcholine can also bind muscarinic receptors, which are on all of the effectors innervated by our parasympathetic nervous system. When these muscarinic receptors are activated, they can either cause depolarization or hyperpolarization. So either excitation or inhibition of that tissue, depending on what that tissue is. So this is how we get those excitation effects to the digestive tract, but relaxation effects to the heart and lungs when we have parasympathetic nervous system activation. The effects of our cholinergic neurons are short-lived because that acetylcholine is broken down very quickly in our synapse by an enzyme called acetylcholinesterase. So that's why we kind of have that rapid muscle contraction and then it immediately stops. Again, really short-lived effects. Our adrenergic neurons are our neurons that release norepinephrine, and this is those sympathetic postganglionic neurons that innervate all tissues except sweat glands. Our adrenergic receptors, that meaning receptors that can bind norepinephrine and epinephrine, come in two types, alpha and beta. Our alpha 1 receptors and beta 1 receptors, when norepinephrine binds to them, causes excitation. So this is what we see in our heart and our lungs to accelerate our heart rate and our respiratory rate. Our alpha 2 receptors and our beta 2 receptors, when norepinephrine binds those, is going to cause inhibition in those tissues. So these are things that we would see in the digestive tract organs and things like salivary glands. We do have a special third type of a beta receptor called a beta 3 receptor. These are only found in brown fat in babies, which helps them with their thermogenesis. Babies are not very good at keeping themselves warm, so they have an extra layer of fat called brown fat to help them do that. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are longer lived in the synapse and when they bind to receptors because it takes a little bit longer for them to be inactivated. They are inactivated by two larger enzymes called catechol-O-methyltransferase, which we shorten to COMT, and our monoamine oxidase, MAO. So why these enzymes are important is because we can give a lot of medications that affect these receptors, such as beta blockers to help decrease our patient's heart rate, as well as MAOIs, which are monoamine oxidase inhibitors, which would allow for epinephrine and norepinephrine to be longer lived in that synaptic cleft. So just lots more on these receptors and these different types of enzymes if you are going to be taking nursing or anything that involves pharmacology. And here's a great summary slide from your book that includes the types of cholinergic and adrenergic receptors, where you would find them in the body, and the effects that we would see when those receptors are activated. Finally, we just need to review a little bit of vocab. Again, a lot of this relating to more of our pharmacology side of this. But an agonist is something that can bind a receptor and activate it. So this is going to mimic a natural substance, and it's going to be able to bind that same receptor that substance can and activate it. An antagonist is going to be able to bind a receptor and block that receptor, so inhibit it. We use both of these principles regularly with different medications that affect our neurons. And then finally, we know that we are not normally, hopefully, in a fight or flight response or in that rest digest. So there is not usually in our body or in our day-to-day life a full activation of either one of those systems. They live within a balance that we call autonomic tone. This is what allows us to be awake and alert, but also be able to kind of relax and digest our food. All right, and that is it for this chapter.